I'm Dr. Tim McGrew. I'm a Christian philosopher, and I enjoy building connections with people at Atheist Edge.
First thing is, so Brady Blevins, Dr. Brady Blevins, you've been on the show a number of times in the past, and so welcome back.
Hey, good to be here.
And let me see if I can do this from memory. You have your doctorate in education. You have 2 master's degrees in counseling and, don't tell me, apologetic ministries. And you are still assistant dean at, is it Arlington Baptist College?
Yeah, it's now Arlington Baptist University.
And you are the, senior apologist is your title at Watchman Fellowship, which is a nonprofit group that studies counterfeit religions and cults and ministers and teaches churches and universities internationally on the dangers of the counterfeit religions.
Yes, sir.
Was that pretty good?
That's pretty good, man.
That was all from memory.
That was very impressive. I'll see if my wife can do just as well, huh?
Oh man. Okay. The reason why I wanted to sit and chat with you real quick. Well, first off, I'm not using the ideal equipment settings because we just had I'm not joking, a 15-hour recording session last Saturday. 15 hours straight. Yeah. Man. So I am up to my eyeballs in raw footage, but a lot of my equipment that I normally use is still over at the studio. We had a talk at the Freedom from Religion Foundation here locally, the local chapter, and I left a suitcase full of speakers there. And luckily, one of the other members called me and said, "Hey, are these yours?" So I was scatterbrained. I was, by the end of that day, oh gosh. But
that's a long day.
Yep. You recently posted a video. I recently saw a video that you put out on behalf of the Watchman Fellowship. I believe it was, right? And it was on faith, the definition of faith, how it's the most misunderstood word in the Bible. And we both know the Greek word is pistis. And this is where I told him at the last book club meeting, I said, Brady, do not get a big head now, but of all the apologists, of all the Christians, of all the believers ever that have tried to explain the meaning of the word faith, this is the first time I actually kind of got an idea what you guys mean by it.
Wow. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that.
It's true.
Or maybe we could better understand faith, not to be some kind of blind leap, or we're just kind of hoping in something that we really don't have any good reasons to believe. Or maybe it would be better to say that faith looks a little bit more like this.
Now, I had a long talk with John Loftus when he was in town, and that video, I'll link that video right now it'll be in the description section. But go back and watch that. And the whole time, we're just carrying on about how, and I still kind of think this to some extent, but 20 years ago, when I was younger, faith seemed to be, when it was used in context, or when it was used in common parlance, that it was this, just like your video said, it was this blind leap. It was this just reaching out and not knowing if you're going to get what you need or if things are going to turn out the way you want. It's just shot in the dark kind of deal. Yeah. But now, as apologetics have become more refined over the years, it's turned into something more of a knowledge, something close to a certainty. And I don't know if you would characterize it as a certainty, but well, yeah, I'll stop there and let you just kind of chime in.
Sure. Yeah. And we get into where's this misunderstanding about faith and why is it misunderstood? And one of the biggest things, we start with the word faith, and we look at the etymology of it, and it's, begins as this Latin word that means trust and confidence. And then almost like within 100 years, you start to see this moving away from, maybe it can also mean, for lack of better terms, belief without evidence. In fact, I'd even pulled up one way of looking at the etymology on this word, because it just, when I was really starting to dig deep into it, because I was really interested, why does it come out this way? Well, I looked at one website. It's the Online Etymology Dictionary. I thought that, okay, this seems like really good evidence to see. By the middle of the 14th century, it now had this, it still has this faithfulness to trust or promise, but now it carries this concept of well, it has something to do with religious belief. And I think that if we want to talk about the beginning of the demise of the word faith, I think that's exactly where it comes down to, is that we start seeing this transition. So what I really learned was, this isn't about trying to figure out what fide means or trying to figure out what the English word faith means. You have to go back into the language in which the Bible was written in, or the languages in which the Bible is written in, and see, okay, what does that word mean? And that takes us right to, when we're talking in the New Testament, we're talking about pistis, because every time the word faith or belief is used, you're looking at either pistis or pistuo. Now, every word in the New Testament where it's some kind of faith or belief has that root stem of the word pistis in it. So that's really our foundational word as we look into the New Testament. But you also see this in the Septuagint, LXX 70, where they translated the Hebrew word. They used this same word pistis throughout. So even within the Hebrew word for it, I'm almost afraid to, because I know I'm going to mispronounce this. It's like Haman carries this same idea of what this word pistis means, which is to believe or belief, to be steady in, to be sure, to accept as true. And so now, okay, all right, now we're starting to kind of get a little bit better grasp of it. But then we get to this Greek word pistis, and we see that John, the apostle, the author of the Gospel of John, he uses the verb pistuo to indicate the circumstances of believing something. And then you see in the Apostle Paul, for example, he chooses to use the word noun, the noun form of pistis, throughout his letters. In fact, with the exception of Romans 3:22, when he's actually uses the noun and verb form when he says, faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe. And so you're seeing this division in how the word's used. But even then, this is just trying to be as fair as I can be on to both ends, is to the context matters. And how a word is used, the context absolutely matters. And so to get a full, complete understanding, you want to look at the word, how it's used. But what it's definitely not used as in any of the usages, and there's around, somewhere around 300 in the New Testament. You don't ever see it being used as a leap of faith or a blind faith, some kind of groping in the dark. That's why it's like
the closest maybe might be Hebrews 11:1. Of course, I don't like always going back to that, but it's on the screen right now for the people watching. Sure. I can't recite it. I'm sure you can, but that might be the closest thing to a leap of faith in the Bible, maybe.
I can understand how that's a misunderstanding, and I think this is where we come down to the whole issue of why I think faith is the most misunderstood word in all the Bible. And that's because I'm not blaming the skeptics for our thought on faith. I'm not blaming atheists. I'm not blaming people of other religions. I'm putting it on the square shoulders of the Christians not taking the time to understand what their Bible says and then appropriately and accurately convey what that word means. And so, because I'm going to tell you right now, and I know that there are some Christians out here who won't say this or they'll skirt around it. Look, there's a lot of Christians who believe that faith is exactly that. It's a blind leap. It's, I'm just kind of groping in the dark for something, hoping to find it. There's a lot of Christians out there who that's what they think that faith means, and it's disappointing to me. But for me as a Christian, especially as a guy who preaches in churches, it makes me more cognitive to think about how I'm going to describe it. Well, let's talk a little about Hebrews 11 for just a moment, because, and I'll say the verse here. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And I think what's important is that even though the evidence is not seen, doesn't mean that the evidence is not there or that's not
verified.
Yeah, and so you think about it like
we can verify oxygen. No one's ever seen oxygen. Is that maybe what it's talking about?
Oh yeah, I think that would be a great way to put it. I mean, because obviously we are sucking in some oxygen, or we'd be dead. So one way that I know my boss James Walker likes to, the illustration he likes to use, and I think it's a great illustration, is that let's say your boss says that he's going to give you or she's going to give you a bonus. Okay, we're nearing towards the end of the quarter where they go a Christmas bonus, a holiday, whatever they call it, and they're going to give you a bonus. Well, you don't have the check in your hand, which is the that's the hard evidence. That's the evidence that we're looking for, right? That's the evidence that we want. Instead, we have evidence that's not seen, and that evidence is the fact that our boss has been good to give us a check all throughout the year. Maybe she has given us a bonus check in years past, or if nothing else, you trust her word or his word enough that you know that you're going to receive this check at the end of the quarter.
Okay, so that's relying on past experience. That's historical precedent. That's the same way I would say I believe the sun is going to rise tomorrow because it has for the last 51, almost 52 years in my experience. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, okay, I think I understand that. Let me jump in real quick. I know I'm cutting you off.
No,
I've taken too many notes, so I want to try to catch up on some things. So, sure. As a child, I heard walk by faith, not by sight, a lot more than I do now. I also heard leap of faith a lot more than I do now. I think with the rise of I hate to coin a term, new apologetics, because I hate when people call me a new atheist. With the rise of apologetics in its current form, I think they're trying to limit that reach out in the darkness kind of definition. I think the word is changing. You said pistis means knowledge. We knew that. You said fide, which I didn't know what it meant. I'm guessing it means faith, only because, as a Marine, and for those of you that don't know, Brady, you are a Marine brat. I think that's why I like you. Right. I think that's the main reason I like you.
Hey, I'll take it.
So your dad's a Marine, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, awesome. Okay, so you mentioned in the just now you mentioned regarding the video, faith as complete trust, a reliance, and a confidence in.
To believe to the extent of complete trust and reliance. To believe in, to have confidence in, to have faith in, to trust. Faith, trust. Let me give you an example of this. See, you believe that the airline pilot can take you to your destination. You believe that the car will stop when you press the brake pedal. You believe the chair will hold you up when you sit down. You believe the bulletproof vest will stop the bullet. See, look, you can believe that those things are true all day long, but it never means that you're actually placing your trust in those things. You'll never know if those things can ever really do that unless you believe in the airline pilot by boarding the airplane. You believe in the car's ability to stop by putting it in gear, or the chair by actually sitting down, or the bulletproof vest by stepping into the gunfire. See, if you don't have faith, or maybe we could better say trust, in the airline pilot, you're never getting on the plane. If you don't trust the brakes, you're never putting that car into gear. Not unless you have a death wish. Listen, if you don't really believe in that chair's ability to hold you up, you're never going to put your blessed assurance on it, right? Or how about this? You're not going to step into gunfire if you don't believe in that bulletproof vest to stop the bullet. See, once you actually put all those items into action, you go from believing that it can do it to believing in it to do it.
Now, this leads me to my first question, and I hate to say this, we got 40 minutes tops left. We only have 40 minutes left, so we still got to get through these two questions too. So the first question, that leads me to the first question. Let me word it this way. If you were to take a poll, let's say 1,000 people that profess the label Christian, all right? 1,000 Christians. I'm going to name, it used to be three things, and I added a fourth word to describe faith. It used to be knowing, hoping, and guessing. And given those three, from my experience, most people choose hoping. Mm-hmm. Well, they did. Now they choose knowing. But if I give them that fourth option, trusting, everyone picks trusting. So just for the sake of, I'm going to take out trusting for now. So I'm going to ask you right now, if you were to poll 1,000 Christians, the majority would, what would be the closest synonym to faith? Knowing, hoping, or guessing?
It would be good if there was something between knowing and hoping, because I think it's intellectually dishonest to say that you know, because in the same way like an atheist can't say that they're 100% certain that there is no God, a Christian can't honestly say that they're 100% certain that there is a God. And so I couldn't say knowing, but I would say it's like hoping plus, because I have evidence that leads me to believe it. I mean, you could take this a little bit further to like, the scientific data for like the Big Bang, for Big Bang cosmology, points to there being something outside of space, time, matter, and energy that put all this into motion. And so, there's something there. Now, is it God? I don't know. I mean, I can't say it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work from effect to cause. And then that's where you get into not just the cosmological argument, but the teleological argument, to a lesser extent, the moral argument for the existence of God. So it's like, okay, I can see that there's some evidence there for me to go on. And then now to make the next step to the Bible, okay, now we're talking about, can we depend on the New Testament? If you can prove the New Testament, you basically get the Old Testament thrown in for free. So I've got something to go on. So it's more than just a hope. It's not just, hope in one hand and spit in the other and see what happens. But there is a level to where I have to trust that what I have for my evidence is good.
That's why I hesitate to throw in that word trust, because everyone falls on it, and it really doesn't answer my question. So I purposely left it out. So you're hoping plus, that's really good, Brady. I've never really heard it explained that way. Hoping plus, and the way you just described it was, you did mention evidence twice. And what I'm, not to put you on the spot, but if you had enough evidence, the hoping plus would become knowing, yes?
Well, now you're talking to an apologist who really likes to dissect words. So the only way that you can fully know is if you had the only way you're fully going to know is when you die. And I'm not there yet, but I would say it's pretty close to knowing. I mean, and that's why I have a great confidence. Like they say, well, how confident are you in the Bible? How confident are you that there's a God and it's Yahweh, the God of the Bible? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it would be a little silly for me to try to put a number to it, but it would be in the upper 99% percentile. I can't know 100% for sure, but man, I am rather confident. I mean, if you're going to talk me out of my, hate to say it, out of my faith, and there's a lot that's going to have to be chipped away, because there's a lot of things that go into me placing my trust in Christ, whom I have never seen.
99% is the exact percentage I would give my belief that the God of the Old and New Testament does not exist. But my fellow atheists, non-believers, skeptics, they want to kick me out of their club sometimes when they hear that I'm only around 65% sure that any form of intelligent agent doesn't exist. And that's not high enough for them.
Well, I'm sure that there'll probably be some Christians mad that I didn't say 100%, but
Right.
I mean, just you got to be honest about it. You got to be fair about it, and the fact is that there is some level of trust, and I think that's where that whole interchange in John chapter 20 between Thomas and Jesus comes into a great deal of importance. And I mean, I'm sure your viewers are smart. They probably know exactly, the whole interchange. You have Jesus has died on the cross. He's rose from the dead. He's appeared to some of the disciples, but not all of them. Not to Thomas. The other disciple, hey, Thomas, Jesus rose from the dead. Then he makes this grandiose statement, hey, unless I can put my, hand in the print of his finger in the print of his nails, thrust my hand into his side, I will never believe. Then, just a few moments later, here comes Jesus in the middle of the room going, yeah, hey, Tommy, you want to stick your finger here? Hey, here, lift up my shirt. Here, do you want to thrust your hand in the side? And his response is, my Lord and my God. And then Jesus makes a statement. And some people will say, well, no, look, see, this is why if you have evidence, you can't have faith. Because then Jesus, he makes this statement, and I'm paraphrasing. He tells Thomas, or actually he makes a statement, blessed are those who have not seen and believe. And so now you have that pushback. Well, what Jesus is saying here is that, hold on, now Thomas, you got me in person. Like, you can touch me, but it's blessed for those people who don't have the same evidence that you have and still believe. Now, I still have evidence. My evidence is the testimony of the people who did see him, of people like Thomas and John and Matthew. Yeah, I mean, in getting those, the gospel report. That's my evidence. Now, who's got better evidence? Well, obviously, the one who got to touch the resurrected Jesus has better evidence. And so I think sometimes it's not that we don't have evidence. I think sometimes there are skeptics who just don't like the evidence that we have.
Yeah, you nailed it. Your evidence, at best, is secondhand information. That's at best, and that's minus. I don't want to get into the debate about whether the Gospels were written by the actual who they claim to be, but at best, it's secondhand information. At worst, it's watered down 300 years worth of a game of telephone.
Yeah.
You said earlier. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, no, you don't want to go down that road, so I won't go down that road.
No, we beat that horse to death in the book club meetings, mostly thanks to Bill Cluck.
Well, if he would just accept our answer and move on, we would be doing so much better. But
he does have valid points, but yeah, sometimes the conversation drifts that direction when it might be better served other places.
Sure.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned Thomas. I didn't even think of this, but I have caught myself in the past telling Christians Thomas lost his faith, and they look at me like, "What? He absolutely lost his faith because he demanded empirical evidence. He demanded to physically touch the wounds, to see Jesus resurrected, and to know that he had died and come back. So he didn't rely on secondhand information. He wanted it hard empirical evidence. As soon as he got that made his confidence 100%. Therefore, no need for faith anymore because he knew it. If you know it 100%, your faith is lost. And that was my justification. And maybe I need to tailor that now.
Yeah, because just because you have better evidence doesn't mean that you don't have evidence anymore. And so I guess that would be my pushback on that. And I wouldn't necessarily say that he was going on second hand because these were people who were saying, no, we saw him. He appeared to us.
Yeah, okay. Great point. Well, okay, I guess to clarify, his evidence reached a point of maximal certainty. At that
Yeah.
point, anyone that reaches that point doesn't need faith anymore. I don't know if that's true. That's what I used to say to Christians. But if you are you admitted 99%. If you reach this point of there is no way I can be wrong, faith not required anymore. It's pure 100% certainty. Yeah.
I would agree with you to a point on that. I think in terms of the existence of the resurrected Jesus, yeah, I guess I could go with you on that sense that like there's no faith required because, well, he's seen him, he's touched him. The issue is settled. But in this word, I think it takes us back to Hebrews chapter 11, because I really think that the better definition is not verse 1, but really the chapter as a whole. I mean, now if you wanted to kind of shrink it in, you might say like Hebrews 11 verses 1 through 3 maybe. But what happens is you got, would you want to look at Hebrews 11, 1 through 3 for just a moment?
Yep. That's why I got it pre-recorded. Now we can go and check it out.
Yeah. I have it pulled up here if you want me to just read it.
Sorry.
No, you're all right.
1 through 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the passage says this: now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good report. Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. Now, what flows from verse 4 to the end of the chapter is a list of what we Christians will call the heroes of the faith, the Hall of Fame of faith, if you will. And so it starts with, by faith Abel, by faith Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses. Now, the Hebrew people as a whole. Well, now we start looking at their level of faith. Now, Abel, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, they all claim to have a personal interaction with God. Okay? Now, we may not feel comfortable with that. We may push against that, but this is the claim that they had. And so I would say, yeah, their concept of faith in the existence of God may no longer need to be used in that frame of reference, but it's what they did. By faith, Abel gave a better sacrifice than Cain. So he trusted in God that his sacrifice of the animal was going to be a better sacrifice. Enoch, same thing. Noah is a great example. So he has this interaction with God, ultimately to build a boat. And even though, according to what the Bible says, it had never rained at that point, and so he's still trusting in God, but he's not at this base level where we're at, where we're just trying to trust that God actually exists. He's trusting in God for things in his life. Now, what I think is really interesting is you have the Hebrews. They're interesting as a whole because they trusted God and he parted the Red Sea and they crossed it. But what's even more interesting is that one of the very last people, the last female listed on the list in Hebrews 11 is Rahab. She's a harlot, a prostitute. She lives in Jericho, and the two spies come in to spy out Jericho. The two Hebrew spies come in to spy out the land, and what was her evidence? She had heard how Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, had delivered the children of Israel out of Egypt, parted the Red Sea, and now they were here. So she had just heard the stories. She had just heard the testimony of what had happened. Maybe the second or even third hand about what God had done. And that was the evidence that she went on to trust God. And so, I look at it and go, man, there's a possibility that minimal, I have the same evidence that Rahab had. There's a good chance I may even have better, because I think I'm hearing it from firsthand testimony. I know we're not getting in that argument today, but
Yeah, we're racking and stacking varying levels of probability because, like Rahab, that level of evidence is way weaker.
Very low.
And just to butt in, I'm sorry. Great points, though, Brady.
What have we learned then? Well, we've learned that faith really equals trust. That we have a reasonable faith that's based on evidence. It's not a blind leap or anything like that, but yet a reasonable faith that we can trust. I want to thank you for watching the video. My name is Brady Blevins, Senior Apologist at Watchman Fellowship. I'd like to encourage you, if you like this video, come check out our website, watchman.org, WATCHMAN, watchman.org. Thank you again for watching.
But to try to move it along, back to Cain and Abel. Oh, the first thing that I always think of, there's going to be a funny video clip here. This is probably just a chance to put a funny Monty Python clip in. But to Cain and Abel, when I read the Bible, this is a side note. It seems like when they go through these long lists that they're trying to pad their word count, maybe for the Bible. I know that's not true,
It
but
feels that way sometimes.
like blessed are the sloths and the fruit bats and the orangutans.
And the Lord did grin, and the people did feast upon the lambs and sloths and carp and anchovies and orangutans and breakfast cereals and fruit bats and large...
Give a bit, brother.
But with Cain and Abel, what evidence did Abel have? What prior evidence did he have that Yahweh preferred to eat meat? I just don't see how that could...
Well, yeah, it's not so much eating meat; it's the animal being sacrificed.
Okay, of course.
Yeah, it's because this goes back to the whole without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. Okay. Life is in blood, so blood had to be shed. And his evidence, I think, would be in the fact that when Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, they tried to cover their sin, their nakedness with fig leaves, and God killed an animal and gave them animal skins to wear. And so I think that could very well have been his evidence. Or maybe probably more logically would be his parents telling him the story. I mean, that's probably more logical to think they told him the story and he said, oh, well, this is what God wants, as to where Cain says, hey, well, no. The fruit of my labor is these vegetables, and that's what I want to give God. Well, that's noble and all that, you want to, hey, this is what I had to work hard for, and this is what I want to give God. But the problem is sin demands a sacrifice. And so the only way that you can have that covering is through the shedding of blood.
We can agree, though, that in both cases of Rahab and Abel, that level of evidence is much less than that would make faith closer to guessing than hoping plus.
Well, I would push back a little bit on that, just by saying that it doesn't make it more like hoping. It's just you just don't like that evidence as much, because like Rahab still had evidence. You may not like her evidence. You may not be comfortable with her evidence.
Okay.
That may not be enough evidence for you to feel comfortable moving forward, but it was for her.
But, okay, I'm looking at United States legal terminology. Now, that's just one form, and you can say, well, that in itself is subjective, but evidence seems to be able to be objectively measured. There is weak evidence, there is stronger evidence, and there is overwhelming evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's move to question number 2 that we talked about after the book club. Often Christians will online or not so much in person. You see it a lot online, and you see it in Christian memes where in popular books even, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Yeah. I think it's common for Christians to use the word faith as a weapon, as an attack, a pejorative against atheism. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're familiar with the tu quoque fallacy, like, oh, we might have faith, but so do you. It's almost an admission that faith isn't valid when you say, well, atheist, you have faith too in science and your logic. And so you're just as bad as we are. That's how I hear them saying it.
Yeah. And that's a shame, because they're so close to making a valid point, but they step off into like the abyss of bad argument, I've thought about this before, about why why it's, I mean, because, we had a conversation about this, and I thought, why is this a pejorative? Of course, now, Turek in his book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, he's being tongue-in-cheek with the colloquial definition of faith, or maybe the more accepted definition of faith in the English word faith. But I think it comes in, and you mentioned this verse earlier, and I think that's hitting the nail on the head when we get into passages like 2 Corinthians 5:7 that says, "For we walk by faith, not by sight," and we isolate that verse. Now, I'm not blaming the atheist for this, but I'm going to blame the Christian for this. That's lazy Bible study. And I teach Bible study methods, which is hermeneutics, the science of biblical interpretation. Really, it's the science of interpretation, but the word's almost exclusively used for the Bible. But you think about that passage for just a moment. In 2 Corinthians 5, beginning in verse number 1, and we have to remember that the chapter divisions and the verse divisions were put in about 500 years ago or so that it's easier to read in public. And this is, they're not inspired, and sometimes the breaks are in very unfortunate places. For the most part, though, it's fine. But the chapter starts out this way. It says, "For we know that if the tent that is our earthly home is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made of hands, eternal in the heavens. For in this tent we groan, longing to put on our heavenly dwelling, if indeed by putting it on we may not be found naked. For we are still in this tent. We groan being burdened, not that we would be unclothed, but we would be further clothed, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. He who has prepared for us this very thing is God, who has given us the Spirit as a guarantee. So we are always of good courage. We know that while we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord, for we walk by faith, not by sight. Yes, we are of good courage, and we would rather be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So whether we are at home away, we make it our aim to please Him. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive what is due for what he has done in the body, whether good or evil." And so we have this verse is right here in the middle of a context talking about our body and our heavenly abode. Now, obviously, we can't see the heavenly abode. We're having to trust that we're actually going to be going to this heavenly abode. And even here, God's given us evidence that He's going to be good for it by the giving of the Holy Spirit. Paul says that's a guarantee. That's something that He's kind of like a good faith giving that He's giving to us. And so we're trusting in something. We're trusting that we're going to get that bonus check, and the reason why we have the confidence that the check's going to cash and that we're going to go to heaven when we die is based on the person of who God is and how He's been revealed. You said trusting at least 4 times in that, and in the passage we have guarantee, we have certainty. But the way you're using trusting, I think the passage, the way I heard it, it's more of, I would read that passage and say it's knowing. Faith is knowing. It's closer to knowing than it is to trusting or hoping plus. I think God wants you to know with certainty. And which, okay, I know you want to respond to that, but I got to get this out or I'll forget. If that's true, pick any. We'll go with yours, hoping plus, and whatever, and then you coin a new definition for that. But whatever word we call it, let's say trusting. If faith is basically synonymous with trusting, based on historical precedent and evidence, however weak or strong it is. But if faith is synonymous with trusting, my last question to you: what makes the word faith unique biblically? And if there's no unique definition to it, why not just replace it with trust? Faith, the word, becomes irrelevant. It becomes dispensable. Oh, thank you. You're preaching my sermon, Jim. Because you couldn't say it better. I mean, honestly, how you said you couldn't say it better because what we've done, and Jim, I'm going to tell you right now, we've done the same thing in reverse with the word baptism. And I mean, I know this is a Christian problem, not an atheist problem or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm interested though.
There's so much confusion with what baptism is and what's all about. Do we dip? Do we sprinkle? Is it immerse? What is this? Well, what they did is when they got to the word baptize, it means to dip or immerse. So rather than translating it, they transliterated it. So the beta became a B, the alpha became an A, the P or pi became a P, the tau became a T, the iota became an I, the zeta a Z, and then of course we're English, so we put the E at the end. And so now as a result, rather than, I mean, you got people out there who are sprinkling, calling it baptism, when that's not what the Greek word means. And so, well, now what we've done is we've taken this word pistis and we've translated it to this word faith, even though, and I can't remember exactly what you had said just a few moments ago, but the word pistis means trust or confidence in. This is how it's being used. Like in the 2 Corinthians 5:6-8, Paul's talking about being confident in something. I'd want to look up that. And I didn't even think about doing it. Maybe I can wiggle over here and find it or something.
Oh yeah, we're pre-recorded. You can look up whatever you need. So fide is faith, right? Is that the Greek?
Yeah, that's Latin.
Oh, that's Latin. Okay, so because I semper fidelis, always faithful, Marine Corps. That's, I guess. So would fide be a more, I don't know. So you're saying they got it all wrong, and if you could just rewrite the Bible, anywhere there's pistis in the Bible, you would put trust instead of faith, and so you would get rid of the word faith altogether?
Oh, absolutely. I would.
Really?
I would be happy to get rid of the faith and replace it with either trust or confidence or belief.
As needed, based on the context.
based on the
Holy
context.
crap! I think we got somewhere. That's good, but there's a substantial percentage of Christians that would push back on that. I'm sure, right?
Oh, I'm sure. And, I'm definitely not a Greek scholar. I'm not even going to pretend like I am. I got graduate level hours and undergraduate level hours, and I know enough to be dangerous. But what I can tell you is that if they're trying to take faith to mean anything other than trust or confidence in, based on the context in which it's used, they just don't understand what the word pistis means. And I mean, it's probably the same kind of person who uses the Webster's dictionary to study their Bible.
And the same kind of people who unironically throw the word faith back at atheists. Saying,
oh, exactly, yeah. It would be the person who says, well, you have faith and I have faith. We all have faith. Well, no. I would say that we both have trust. We're both trusting in something. And now we could argue with what trust is better to have, but to try to say that you're blindly groping and I'm blindly groping and therefore we're all the same. No, I don't think that's fair to you, and I don't think it's fair. I wouldn't think it's fair to me either.
Brady, were you looking up something? Do you want to look at that?
Yeah, I looked up this word, the Greek word for faith, or for faith, for guarantee. And I mean, obviously, I'm not getting too deep into this. I'm trying to see. It looks like it's only used one time in the Bible.
It's probably that 2 Corinthians passage.
Yeah, and it's by Laonida, which is a trusted one. They have first installment, down payment, pledge, guarantee, earnest money, that kind of sense.
Sounds like trust. It sounds like trust in me to do what I say I'm going to do for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it, almost like, when we bought our houses, right? We had to give earnest money, and that was our guarantee to them that we were going to follow through with it. And if we didn't follow through with it, they got to keep, the money that we gave them. So I would agree with you. It sounds a little bit more like, just a trust.
A guarantee for God might be, look, I give you the free will to believe in me, but I understand there's going to be skeptics like Jim Hall out there. So as a guarantee, if you at least keep trying to believe in me and try to get to heaven, then my guarantee to you will be you can avoid the fiery pits of hell and just maybe go to limbo for eternity if you don't make it. That would be some sort of like middle ground guarantee. Earnest money.
Yeah, I would. Well, no, because this is written to believers, and they're talking about our future home in heaven, and the guarantee that He gave us that there would be a future home in heaven is the Holy Spirit.
But by the time we get to John, the high Christology, and it seems like every other verse by the fourth gospel is almost written for non-believers, because it really pushes that you need to believe, buddy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31, John gives us the whole purpose of writing his epistle. In fact, I want to read this because I give this to my Bible study method students to show them as an example. This is what he writes in John chapter 20 and verse 30. He says, "Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in His name." So yeah, you're absolutely right, Jim. The whole purpose of the book, the reason why John wrote his gospel is so that people would be able to believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God.
It's not written for believers. It's written for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can still get something from it.
Right,
I mean,
true.
there's still good stuff to get out of it, but yeah, I mean, the minute that you accept Christ, you're not the target. In fact, when we go through the Gospels, when we get to John, we say John was written to the world. Matthew was written to the Jews. Mark was written to the Romans. Luke was written to the Greeks. John was written to the whole world. And so, which by the way is really good to help you to understand why, because I know some of the pushback has been, and they'll call it a contradiction, like, oh, well, what time was Jesus crucified? Well, it depends on which gospel you read. Well,
all right, Bart Ehrman.
Yes, I'm channeling my Bart Ehrman, and it aggravates to somebody like me because I know he knows better. He knows that Mark was written to a Roman crowd, and the Romans figured time slightly differently than what the Jews did.
Wait, whoa. So you're saying if I say the first hour is not 6 a.m. to everybody, and I don't know, 9 a.m. and what second hour is noon, and third hour is 1500?
The ninth hour, yeah. It's different.
It's different.
It's different.
I didn't know that.
It's different in Roman thought versus Jewish thought. So you have to reconcile those two. But again, it's like this. If you're reading, it's the difference between reading a letter that was written to your mother from your father, or reading a letter that you wrote to your mother. They're going to sound a little different. I mean, if Daddy hadn't seen Mom in a while, it may be a little more R-rated, as to where Jim's letter home while he was serving overseas in the Marine Corps, probably not reading the same way, that you would have to one of those 20 girls that you probably had waiting for you back here in the States, right?
My side note, there was a comedian, and he talked about how letters home from the war were from the Civil War versus Iraq War. And Civil War, even though they were probably, I don't know, they sounded way more educated. It'd be like, "My dearest Clementine, my heart grows fond." It's just very flowery. Yeah. And then the average note home from Iraq, it's just like, "Yo, you better not be effing any other dudes. And it's really hot out here. It's really hard to fight with my ball stuck to my leg."
We've definitely changed as a culture, that's for sure.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I hate to cut this short, Brady. But sure. This has been an excellent talk. Did you have any saved rounds? Because we got like 9 minutes.
I think that there's one last thing I'd like to say, and that's, I think we have to ask the question, why is trust so important to God? I mean, is he some kind of, guy who just has some kind of complex that, why does it trust? Well, I think the whole thing comes to, why is this issue of trust so important to God? It's because God initiates the relationship between himself and human beings. And so he expects people to trust him. And a failure to trust him really was, in essence, the very first sin in the Garden of Eden. And so he wants us to trust him. He wants us to have confidence that he is who he says he is and that he will do what he says he's going to do. And so I think that's why it's such a big deal when we don't, because really it's like, what's the biggest sin? Who knows? But God certainly doesn't take kindly to us not trusting him.
Saved rounds for me. I had one. What is it? Oh, I should have said this up front, but what the major impact of that video, what really made me go, like, it was kind of an epiphany. It was the light bulb moment for me was your video clips, that trust fall, the cheerleader and the skydiver. And I was like, whoa. And I actually paused the video and I sat and thought about it. Okay. And that's where I said, I kind of see where they're coming from now.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Yeah. Do you, let's do plugs. Let's start with Watchman Fellowship.
Okay, yeah. Watchman Fellowship, watchman.org, watchman.org. Come check it out. We, like Jim said earlier, counterfeit Christianity, New Age spirituality, cults, false religions. We're evangelical ministry, so that's the angle that we're coming from. Also, of course, the Atheist Christian Book Club, Facebook page, the website, atheistchristianbookclub.com. Well, you'll have it up there. I'm sure you will. So make sure you take part in that. Especially the club's getting good. Hey, Jim, there is one thing I want to tell you about that's coming up, but this video will probably air way after the fact.
At least a month from now, so yeah.
Okay. Let me just tell you now, that way we don't run out of time. First of all, James hopes to see you tonight at the club. He's going to drop off a secret book at the Atheist or at the Metroplex Atheist. He's going to drop off.
You scared me. At first, I thought today was Friday, and then oh gosh.
Okay, I'm very sorry. No, I didn't mean to do that. So
yeah, I will be at Gilligan's because I left equipment at Los Jimadores for that FFRF talk. And I left equipment at the studio that I need right now. So two people are going to come and give me stuff anyway.
Now, here's the big thing. Next Wednesday, a week from today, James and Daniel and possibly Bill will be on Point of View with Kirby Anderson. Now, this is a big syndicated radio program. There'll be hundreds of radio stations. Pretty big deal. And they're going to be talking about the book club. So what James asked me to ask you is if y'all guys could be listening around 1:30, 2 o'clock and be ready to call in and maybe be able to talk a little bit more about the club. So maybe like you, Chris.
Okay, so yeah, that's great. I'll send that off to Chris. If you could send me a reminder and possibly, is it AM radio? It is a radio station. I don't know. If you just give me the name of the station, the time and date it's going to be on as a reminder, I'll add it to my calendar, and then I'll find the phone number if you don't have it. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Just a little shout out for the book club would be cool.
Yeah, because there'll be an opportunity to go in there. Yeah, I'm trying to find the radio station real quick.
But that's all right. I think we can. You can just shoot it to me later, and I can put that in the description section. If it goes to pre-recorded, if there's a recording of it later, or if you guys can grab it out of the ether and put it on the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, on the Watchman
absolutely.
site.
And last time James was on the show, which was I don't know, just a few months ago for the book, he was they had cameras set up, so we actually had really good video to go with it.
I'll try to put that link in the description section of this video as well. It'll be way after the fact, but about the Atheist Christian, about Watchmen. So what Brady was saying, Watchmen, so they do these periods of instruction, and sometimes, from what I understand, it can be up to 5 weeks long. So they go to a church or a university, and they give these lectures, and these lectures are like courses, sometimes up like 5 weeks long. So when they do the one on even though atheism is not a religion, or They do lump it in, and so they do have a period of instruction on that, a course on that. And so often in the past, they have asked me and other atheists in the local area to sit in, and it's usually towards the end of the course where it's like a panel discussion, like a Q&A, and which is very fun. And I would love to do it again. I don't know when you're doing another atheism class, but yeah, it's a good time.
I love it, and y'all guys have always been great. You've been great, Jim. Metroplex Atheist as a whole has been great about it. We do 5 weeks, and I just had a church do it, and I threw that option out, and they declined the option. They just wanted to do 2 weeks, and so they weren't looking to have it take over a whole month of their Sunday nights, and I get that. But yeah, it's great. I go in there and I basically roll through the moral, cosmological, teleological arguments. Then we spend time on how to have these potentially hostile conversations without starting World War III, and that's something that's really important because the kind of dialogue, Jim, that you and I have and that we have at the Atheist and Christian Book Club, that's the kind of dialogue that needs to be happening in our society. In religion, politics, probably more politics than religion these days, because we're having good quality conversation and we're respectful and we're friends. I count you as a friend. I know you've said the same about me and James, and so I treat you as a friend because you are a friend, and so that's really important to us at Watchmen. So we spend a whole session on how to do that. Then we have you guys come out. And then I always tell them ahead of time. I'm like, y'all guys give the questions. Our atheist friends are going to give the answers. And you're not gonna sit there and have some kind of contentious argument. Let them say their answers. And then we come back in week 5 and we talk about it. I try to fix whatever y'all guys broke during the Q&A. I always ask them, okay, hey, was there any answers that bothered you? Were there any answers that you thought, boy, that's a really good point, and because we want to be fair about it, and so then we'll talk about it and talk about what answers were exceptionally good, and some. It's like anything else. Sometimes some answers don't resonate as well with believers.
A good way to bring this entire chat full circle for those churches that are hesitant to bring us in for that Q&A. For that last week, maybe remind them that this is a good way to increase their faith from a guessing or a hoping to a confidence. It's not going to if they're strong enough or confident enough in their faith, maybe it wouldn't. It can never. If anything, it's going to strengthen their faith.
Yeah, and Jim, that's such a much better way of handling it than how I've handled it in the past, where I just questioned the pastor's manhood. But anyway, no.
Hey,
I'm teasing. I haven't had to do that yet.
Viable method. Okay, Brady. Well, thanks so much, and thanks to everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed the new intro. And that last one was a little dark and gothic. I don't know what I was thinking. I must have just watched Bram Stoker's Dracula on that last intro. This one's a little more lively and upbeat, and I like it so much that we'll put it at the end here for you to watch again. Anyway, Take care.
Thank you, Jim.
All right.